Hello, welcome to this Photoshop tutorial video. The idea of this video is not to be a complete tutorial of how to use Photoshop, but more aimed at people that have perhaps used Photoshop a little bit, but just need a quick reminder of how to use different tools. And the video probably isn't worth watching from start to end. It's probably best watched using chapter points, which I'll make sure are inserted into YouTube. So, for example, perhaps you just need a quick reminder of how you can use adjustment layers or what layer masking is, etc. And you can just jump straight to that point in the tutorial. Hope you find it useful, and we'll be starting with create a new image if you continue to just watch it from here. First of all, I am going to create a new file. I assume you have Photoshop open. It's a desktop app, remember, so we're not working in the cloud. We're going to go to File and we are going to say New. A couple of things we can fix here. We can type in a name for our project, and then we can choose from different presets. Here we were set to be the default. We can type in different sizes in pixels and change the units over here. But for the project that we're looking at today, I'm going to assume we're doing something with paper, A4, and in this case I'm going to have a portrait A4 as the width is smaller than the height. You could swap those around if you wanted landscape. Last thing you might consider is, do you want to have a white background or possibly a transparent background if the image that you're going to create is going to be used elsewhere. And there we go, we are ready and we see our image. Quick thing to note, so key presses here, Control minus and Control plus can be used to zoom in and out. And one setting I always go for when I first start a new project, I just make sure that these two tick boxes are set on with the Move tool. First, we're going to look at how we open or place an existing image. So we can go to the File menu, and if we click on Open and browse to the folder where we have an image that's downloaded, we will find here a picture that I've downloaded earlier. And I click on Open, and well, was that what I really wanted? It's opened the image for me, and that is sitting as a new image in Photoshop here that I can see on the tabs. Actually, what I probably wanted to do in that case was not open the image, but actually place the image. So I can go to here, same again, but this time you'll see it places the image into Photoshop for us. We can move it around, and at the moment it's automatically brought the transform tool, so I can do things like moving, resizing the image. If I hold the shift key down, it's better for resizing as it maintains the aspect ratio. Once we've finished with our transformation though, we need to press enter. Here, if we want to get rid of the image that was opened, we can simply close the tab. So how do we add images that we are getting from the web? So we can go to a site like Google Images, we can find images that we would like. We could right click and use Save Image As and save our image away. And then as we saw earlier, you can use the File and Open to open that as a separate image, or we can use File and Place to place it within our existing image. The other thing we can do is we can copy an image to the clipboard, and back in Photoshop we can then just simply go to Edit and Paste, or we can use the shortcut key of Control and V. The image will arrive and we can go straight to the transform tools again. I'm going to hold down the shift key to resize that. Sometimes we might want to insert an image by copying it to the clipboard, but using the snipping tool instead. This could be because the format of the image may not be suitable for Photoshop. So for example, if I look at this image here, if we look at Save As, we can see that this is a WebP image format. So if I save that way or copy it as normal, it's not going to work in Photoshop. So what we could do instead is use the snipping tool, so Windows Shift and S, and then we can draw an area. Perhaps we only wanted a small part, or we could get the whole of the image. And so that's just copied that to the clipboard now, and that is just going to work again with the Control and V or the Edit Paste on the top to get the image in, and again with the transform tools to resize, etc. So that may be an alternative rather than saving the image away, or if copy paste isn't working due to the image format not being compatible with Photoshop. Layers are a really important aspect to understand when you're working with Photoshop. As you can see over here on the panels on this side, I'm switched to the layers. We've got 3 different layers here. One for the background, the main part, and one each for the 2 images that I have inserted or placed onto here. A couple of things: you can lock layers and you can hide them. So I'm hiding there, I'm locking, so if you don't want people to move them and things, you can do so. But probably the most important thing to understand is the idea of depth. The bottom layer, the background, is the one at the bottom. I think of it as a stack. So if I wanted this image here to appear behind the other image, the easiest way to do that is to go to the layers panel and drag it and drop it underneath. Adding text to an image in Photoshop is quite easy. We're going to go over to the Tools panel and select the capital T, the Text tool. You'll notice that when you do that, you get the properties for the text tool at the top here. The things that we might want to change are things like the font style, perhaps its size. Importantly, this one here, the color. Just be careful that the color is not set to be the same as your background, because obviously as you type text in there, it would not appear. So you can choose a color. We can jump in. You want to make sure the text is about the right size for whatever it is you're doing. And here I am going to say my favorite pictures. In this case, the text is kind of going off a little bit, so I'm going to bring that in. And again on the text tool, I have here, we've got it centered, so this is kind of what I'm after. I can also do some fancier things with text by double clicking on the layer that the text exists in. We've got a whole bunch of options that we can do for bezeling and shadows, etc. I might just simply add a drop shadow and increase the size of that to what I'm doing here. But there's lots of options to play around with there. And that's the basics of adding text. Common task we would like to do in Photoshop quite often is to remove the background from an image. So here you can see this ball selected that I've it's got a white background. If it is a plain background, there are different ways that we can remove the background, but if it's a plain one, the best tool is probably the Magic Wand tool. What this one does is, if we select that layer, I can go in and I can click in the area where it was all white, and it does effectively a flood fill selection, so it propagates out from where I've clicked, and wherever it is seeing a very similar color to what where I've clicked, it will select those elements. We can adjust that with things like tolerance and things at the top if colours are perhaps greys and shadows and things, so you might want to adjust that. Once we have our selection though, it's nice and easy. All we do is hit the delete key and it has removed that selection. We still have these marching ants around where the selection was made, so if we wish to get rid of those, we can then do Control and D to deselect them. Now we can switch to the Move tool, and we can kind of move our beach ball down to where I might want it. And in this case, do a quick resize and press enter to agree with that. To remove a background where the image is not just one colour, the Magic Wand tool is perhaps not the best tool. You can use any of the selection tools, but the Quick Select tool would probably do a good job here for this one. So let's make sure we've got our layer selected, Quick Tool selected. Notice up here there's a couple of different ways you can use. You can add or remove to the selection. You can change the brush size. Well, let's just go and see what happens. Hold down the mouse and literally just start kind of letting it do its thing. You'll notice though there are areas where it kind of doesn't quite get it right, so I want to remove some of that selection. So I'm holding down the Alt key now, and you can see there's a minus symbol inside of the icon, which means it's removing parts of the selection rather than adding to them. And I can continue doing that. Now if you're quite slow with it, it does a better kind of job than if you rush it, but still I'm going to need to use the Alt tool here to remove parts of it again and add bits back on. Okay, so we could just delete that using the delete key to remove the background. We could also do some other things. So for example, we could maybe do a fill in there with a paintbrush tool, or we could do a gradient fill perhaps. So let's go in and try that. Lots of different things we could do. Other things could be we could apply a filter. So perhaps I want to blur out the background. I'm going to use a Gaussian blur to do this. So filter, blur, and Gaussian. And you can adjust the amount of blur with this tool here to the levels that kind of are going to suit whatever you need for your image. So in this example, I'm going to use a layer mask and the gradient tool to blend these two images. For the effect to work of what we're about to do, the images need to actually overlap. So as you can see, the couple image there is also underneath the stormy boat sort of picture there. Okay, we're going to first of all select the picture that we want to remove part of to make the blend, which will be the storm one. So I've got that selected in the layers. I'm going to go down and apply a layer mask to that, and you'll see we get a little icon here where it's all white. And the way the layer mask works is that you need to have a black and a white in your color selection tools, and then we select the gradient tool. And effectively what happens is when I apply a gradient like so, what is happening is that you can see here it's leaving part of the image black, it's doing nothing to the couple at the top there, but then as it comes down the gradient is slowly becoming white, and where the white is, that lets the picture sort of kind of come through, if that makes sense, and we get this blur, this blurred sort of joining. Now you have to kind of get the colours kind of just about right. You might have to try it a few times to get the exact effect you're after. But there we go, that's the layer mask tool. Finally, I just want to talk about how to save files away. It's really important you understand a little bit about the file formats here. Also, we are not working in the cloud. This is a desktop application, so you should probably be periodically saving your work as you're going. But here we go. So I'm going to choose a save as, because this is my first time saving this. I'm going to navigate to the folder and make sure I have a sensible file name here. In this case, we are using the Photoshop.psd file format. What this means is it is a file format that Photoshop obviously understands, and when you load one of these up, it has a good understanding of all of the things like layers and objects and filters and all of the things that you have been working on, so you can go in and edit those. However, if you were then trying to use this image in another product, such as a presentation or something, what you would need to do is you'd make sure you save it away as a standard kind of image file format like JPEG or PNG, etc. And unfortunately though, if you do this, you would not be, if you only do this, should I say, you would not be able to come back and edit things like layers, etc., because the JPEG and PNG and bitmap file formats, they are a flat image, so effectively all of the layers are flat and everything becomes one and it just becomes a picture. So often you will need to have a copy of the image as a PSD file and as a suitable image format for where you wish to use that picture, that image. So here we go, I'm saving this away as a PSD file, and now I am going to save it away as a JPEG so that I could use it on another